Broadcasting live from the EBSN online studios in Columbus, Ohio. It's The Rivalry, the tale of two schools, with former NFL scout and son of legendary Michigan head coach, Schembechler, bringing you both sides of the greatest rivalry in all of sports. Here's your host, Schembechler.
And welcome back to the Rivalry Classic Football Show. We are very fortunate to have our guest, wide receiver coach Roy Roundtree of the University of Michigan. How's it going, Roy?
I was doing good, doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Coach. Now, here's one of my observations. One of the reasons why I was so pleased that Coach Harbaugh brought you back to Michigan is exactly for the purpose of this Notre Dame game, don't you think?
I don't know.
Well, I'm entitled to my opinion, Roy, because everybody remembers the last time we lined up in primetime against the Golden Domers and how you clinched that victory for the Michigan Wolverines. Don't you think that makes sense?
You're right, it does. It didn't hit me until we figure out that we had Notre Dame the first game, so it's pretty cool.
That's right, and what a dramatic Michigan victory that was. And so we got to get the very best karma that we can going into this first game, which is critical for our fortunes for this year, for the Big Ten Conference as well as the national scene. So, Roy, it's great to have you. Roy, I've always been a big fan of yours. I'm so happy that you went into coaching, and to see what you're doing now back at the University of Michigan, I think is truly special. I want you to do me a favor, kind of talk to us, take us back to that faithful night when we played Notre Dame, and just, Denard threw you that pass, and I know he kind of threw you under the bus because he said you didn't run a good route. But here's the thing, though. I mean, you made him look good because that pass wasn't all that pretty either. I mean, you had to adjust to the inside and literally take the ball away from that corner. So kind of talk to us about that play and why it turned out such to be a great time in your career for Michigan.
Oh man, I'll just take it back to Notre Dame was up by a lot at the time of the first half, and come back in the huddle having some quick quarter adjustments, and we started itching away at the score, and we was getting closer and closer, and we ended up starting winning, and then they came down the drive and ended up scoring. I remember Coach Hoke telling us, like, hey, we got to get in our 2-minute mode. And, once we got out there on the field, we know, like, hey, this is all or nothing. And, we took it, play by play, missed the first pass, and we came back with the same play, played a Gallon, and, Gallon called it and was cut across the field. And, we started looking at the clock like, okay, well, hey, it's really low now, so what are we going to do? And, Coach O called a timeout and, just take us back to the huddle, just me and Denard being on the same page and, just telling him to, give me a shot, just throw it up there. And it was my responsibilities to, come through on my end. And he said bad route, but I think the route was pretty clean.
I would tend to agree with that.
So I guess I did right.
And the truth of the matter is that ball hung in the air for a pretty long time, to say the least. And so the idea that you had to do an inside adjust, and we're showing the picture of the actual catch as we see it right now on the show.
Like you said, the ball was in the air for a long time, and I kind of lost it up in the lights.
Sure.
And, I actually had to key in and time my jump up right and make sure I had held on to the ball. And once I saw it come down, I knew I had it and secured it, and I know I had 2 feet in as I rolled out of bounds. And after that catch, man, they went into review, and I'm like, hey, I already know I caught it. I told Coach I caught it, and the rest was history.
That is awesome. And I think you hit upon a really important point, Roy, is the idea that you lost the ball in the lights. And kind of take us through as a receiver, how do you track the ball once you've lost it in the lights? I mean, what type of focus does that require to be able to reacquire your sight lines and get the ball at the very end?
Well, it takes a lot.
No doubt.
I had I was really locked in, and at that point in time, after seeing the glare off my visor, I'm up my attention ability of, looking the ball all the way in the tuck. And once I saw like the portion of the football coming down with the stripe of the football, the point of it, I knew I had a chance of capturing it because the defender was looking at me the whole time. He has no sight on the ball. So I made sure that I, focus on it. And it was a, peanut call, which is like the last minute before, the last seconds of the game. So I know if Denard, trusted me, he's throwing it up there. And like I said, man, I remained focused and came down with it.
Well, hey, Roy, that's what I call infinite trust when you throw a ball like that and make the receiver do all the work. So I find that interesting. And now understand, we love Denard, make no mistake, but that pass, you had to make him look really good to make that play. Mark my words, my friend.
Yeah, I think that was one of the hardest catches outside of my Northwestern one.
Yeah,
that was up there for sure.
No doubt about that. So now the last thing I want to ask about that particular play, the officials threw a flag on that play. Isn't that correct?
Sir, that's fair. So the reason why my route was kind of crazy with the North is because I was supposed to run a post corner, and the fact that if I ran my post corner, I wouldn't rush to get outside to catch that ball. So I had to just give him a little quick jab inside to give his lineman and stay outside so I could have contained to have a jump ball fade.
Well, you got to have the end zone behind you too, because if the ball's going to get thrown to the outside, you still have to have the opportunity to get your feet down. And so it behooves you to turn back inside so you can create those opportunities for you, correct?
Correct. And, awesome. That was my whole thing of, it was film recognition, seeing the leverage of the corner, knew what type of coverage that these guys were going to play, and, took advantage of it. And I really, locked in on the route because, it was a big point in our game, instead of kicking a field goal, scoring a touchdown to win the game.
Right, no doubt about it. Well, Roy, let's transition. Obviously, we've got a big game here in a couple days, prime time. Well, not quite prime time, 7:30 kickoff in South Bend. And now we're so fortunate to have you back on the staff. And everybody has been talking about Tariq Black going down with an injury, and he's going to be out for the foreseeable future. And I just want you to kind of talk about who's going to have to step up in the depth chart from the Michigan Wolverines standpoint, whether it's Donovan Peoples-Jones or Nico Collins or any of these other guys. Talk to us about who's going to be the next man up to really serve the best interest of the Michigan offense.
I think it's a group mentality. As we call ourselves the crew, and it's the next man up, and I think Coach Mack and I really prepared these guys, just the position alone to, have those challenges. And of course we're gonna have minor setbacks, but it's the next guy up, and I think the group as a whole has accepted the challenge that Coach Mack overemphasized for us, and I'm looking forward to Saturday. I know these guys are as well, playing against the same guys, the same defense every day, man. They ready to go against somebody else. So, of course, the high expectations for the group in general. So these guys are, just ready to, take on the challenge playing in South Bend and, being a primetime game, like you said.
Yep. Well, I think it's just interesting. And so as you look at this wide receiver group as a bunch, considering the experience that they've had in the past, talk to us about Donovan Peoples-Jones and where do you think he is in regards to compared to where he was last year, starting as a true freshman?
I would say knowing the game now, knowing different coverages, knowing different assignments that we got him, knowing that we could put him anywhere on the field, taking advantage of his opportunities. He's matured there. He's a smart young man. He's he want to be the best player that he can be to help his team. And now that his best friend Tariq is down, it's just more stuff on his plate, and he's able to control that. And every day in practice, we stress, you want to be great, you practice great.
Right.
You practice how you play, and he's taking that challenge to a whole different level. You know,
There's no
if
doubt.
he mess up on an assignment or something, he don't get frustrated like he used to, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, he's just taking one play at a time, and that's what's really been helping him is, you know, slowing the game down, and now he's
Right.
understanding it. You know, he's out there playing fast, so I think
Yep.
that's a great, you know, great tool that he's progressed in.
Right. And you know what? I've always had great regard for those kids that come out of Cass Tech High School like he did. To be the parade All-American and the highly recruited guy that he was, the demeanor of the Cass Tech players always seems to step forward, particularly when given the opportunity. And, I mean, for any receiver, whether it's DPJ or Nico Collins or any of these guys, you always have to go through that period of time where you really understand the nuances of the position. And so I think for Donovan coming into his second year and having to take on a leadership role, I think his persona kind of fits what the Michigan wide receiver group needs, don't you think?
Yeah, and that's the thing that, you know, most people don't really understand, that it's take time. You know, freshmen coming in
Yep.
playing as true freshmen, it's a lot on their plate.
Yep.
They're not adjusted to the playbook. They're not adjusted to how much time management they have to have between classes,
Mm-hmm.
weight room, film studying, and now being able to have that under their belt. All the guys in our group, besides Ronnie, has been there for a year or plus. And
Right.
having a leader like Grant Perry taking over the room, and you
Exactly.
know, this being his senior year, he's really, you know, have been a vocal leader for our position, because he's been brought up from, you know, Amar Darbaugh, J.U. Chasen, and Devin Funches, like all these guys that, you know, play with me, and they know the traditional of how the expectations are for the room. And
Right.
I think he's been doing a great job at that. And every day he's out there coaching, being a coach out on the field, and helping the young guys. And
Yep.
you know, in our group, we got a lot of depth, and you
Mm-hmm.
know, these guys are accepting the challenges and taking it from there.
Right, that's pretty impressive. And I almost forgot to mention Grant Perry, just how important he is, being coming into his last year at Michigan. And he's always been a guy that I always thought was instinctive and had a certain level of explosiveness and good hands, that you can line him up in a variety of different positions, not necessarily just the slot. Correct?
Oh yeah, and he plays every position. So
Right.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, that's the advanced, you know, learning tool that he has for the group. That, you know, it's not just you have to study this position, this position. You have to study every position, and
Mm-hmm.
he's really been doing a great job with that, because he understands the college, you know, the college speed, the college, you know, agenda of how to
Mm-hmm.
prepare for games and how to prepare for practices. And
Right.
he's taken that role, and he's been doing a great job. Proud
Right.
of him on that.
That's awesome. That's really good. And so when I called you the other day, Roy, you had kind of talked about, hey, don't forget about Nico Collins. And now that Tariq's going to be out for a little period of time, I hadn't realized how big Nico is. And just kind of talk about just the matchup problems he's going to provide the Notre Dame secondary, because it just sounds like he's almost like a big tight end in his own right, correct?
Oh man, he's a big guy,
Yeah.
that can really run, that can
Yeah.
really, you know, stretch the field.
Mm-hmm.
You think he's a slot receiver the way he run routes, and to be that
Right.
big, to be able to get out in and out of his cuts, and he
Right.
tracks the ball really well. And you know, he's bringing that confidence, swagger that, you know, that we need, you know, for him to, you know, expand. And like, he's a guy that played a little bit last year, and now he's got spring ball on his belt, summer camp
Mm-hmm.
on his belt, and
Mm-hmm.
he's expanded his role in our offense. And
Right.
I'm really excited to, you know, to see Nico Collins get out there and, you know,
Right.
night game, first one,
Yep.
and show what he can do.
Yep. Let me ask you this, Roy. Would I be stepping out of bounds if we compared Nico Collins to a young Braylon Edwards? Is that out of line in your mind?
I mean, I didn't really see the young sophomore Braylon Edwards,
I
but I
did.
think Nico is his own self, and he's
Yep.
developing, and we'll be able to see. It's different, you know, from practice to Saturday. So I'm
Right.
ready to see what he can do when the lights are on and everybody's out there, and see how fast he moves and the way he make plays that he did in camp in the game situation.
Right. I'm going to be very intrigued to see him play, and just the idea that we have an accomplished quarterback that lined up at Shea Patterson that's going to be able to provide these opportunities for guys that have big frames like Nico Collins. it's going to be so interesting to me just to see how they line up and match up against the Notre Dame secondary. So obviously, Roy, you've done a full week of game planning, anticipation. You've got your scout teams that have resembled the Notre Dame defense in a big way. Kind of talk about just your perspective on what the Notre Dame defense and the challenges it provides, and how we can take advantage from the Michigan offensive perspective. Tell us about Notre Dame.
They're a great defense with a lot of great players. They get to the ball. They're a physical group, and they like to cause turnovers. And it's going to be a great atmosphere and a great challenge for us week one to see where our team is at. And like I said, like our guys in general has a chip on their shoulder, and they ready to go there and be able to display what they've been working on since January. And
right.
These guys really been examining Notre Dame defense and how fast they get to the ball, how fast they playing around. And I think it's going to be a great challenge. But at the end of the day, it's about us, and what we control is ourselves, and we go there and take care of business. Everything should align how we practice it.
Well, we certainly hope so. And just when you can line up against a Notre Dame in the very first game out of the breaks. And so I like to make fun of all my Ohio State friends here, because Michigan's actually playing a real game, while Ohio State playing down here at the Shoe, which I call a scrimmage against the Oregon State Beavers. At least somebody gets to play a game this weekend, okay?
Man, that's why you come to Michigan, man, to play in big games like this every year.
Exactly.
So,
well, Ohio State, they come to Ohio State
path
to play Michigan. So Michigan will play Notre Dame. Now, this isn't to take anything away from the Buckeyes, because they get to play Penn State on the road and Michigan State on the road. But one would think that they would have set up their preseason schedule a little bit better, all right? Everybody gets mad at Gene Smith over all these issues. I get mad at him for scheduling, okay?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, these schedules be out beforehand 2 or 3 years ahead of time. So, it is what it is. But, our method this week is get after Notre Dame.
No doubt about it. Well, Roy, let me finish with this. Obviously, you came from Indiana State to come back home and serve on the Michigan coaching staff. What are your aspirations? Obviously, you want to stay in coaching, obviously. Kind of talk about what it's like to be back in Ann Arbor and to be back in the friendly confines of Schembechler Hall, and just what it's been like ever since you got home.
Oh, man, it's been great. A lot of changes, a lot of new things that wasn't here when I was here. But, that's what you expect, a program like this to keep expanding and, stay on top of the line on everything. And just as far as the coaching aspect, I've learned so much about football in months just from Coach Harbaugh and, a lot of the offensive coaches that I work with. And, I just see how they attack the day every day and, just want to improve, just the little things you want to improve in. And it's just been elevating my game as a coach that I can, expand to the group. And it's been excellent, man. I'm happy that I'm here, and I just work my tail off every day so we can, be able to take one game at a time and keep building on from there.
Well, that's awesome. Well, hey, last but certainly not least, having the arrival of Jim McElwain, who was just a head coach just last year, to come in and coach and tutor the wide receivers. Tell the audience what that's been like so far.
Oh, man, Coach is a great coach, man. Like I said, he's been able to get these guys going, and as far as the learning tools, teaching these guys, just the concepts and where you need to be, how to line up, and having that that physical mindset that can't nobody guard you. And I feel like that was a big thing, big thing playing a receiver, because you got to have confidence at this position, at this level. And all those guys have been challenged that from Coach Mack, and I enjoy it. And he's teaching these guys every little thing that that we need to know to be successful. And he's been a great addition. I I'm not just saying that. I'm saying that with passion, that I enjoy working with them every day.
That's awesome. Well, Roy, we really appreciate you taking the time. Safe travels to South Bend. We want to wish you and the Michigan Wolverines the best of luck as we kick off this great 2018 Michigan football season. And appreciate your time once again, Roy. All the best.
Thank you for having me, and go Blue.
All right, buddy, go Blue. All right. Now,
Yes.
You talk about thanks, Roy. Now, you talk about this Michigan team, and Roy touched upon this, and I think this is really important, that this team overall has a chip on their shoulder. And considering all that they've been through in the past 2 or 3 years, and now this 4th year of the Harbaugh administration, you can just get the feel for this team. They are so anxious to really prove themselves, and understanding they have arguably the toughest schedule in college football today. My hope and my plan is that this team is really going to step up to the plate, and I think it's perfect and ideal to open up with a game like Notre Dame, because what it does, it sets up your complete offseason. And considering the adversity we've had against Ohio State, you want to be able to, as a program, to say we're going to start off on the very best foot and come out with guns blazing and ready to go. And I just think it's going to be a really, really exciting Michigan football season. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we get back, we're going to be back up here. Now, obviously, this is an interview. We're going to be back up at the Brown Jug in Ann Arbor. And we've got some exciting things to talk about. Steve Kornacki has got his new book. He actually allowed me to write the foreword for the book. So what does that tell you? Maybe he was desperate to find another guy to write it, and it had to settle on me. So we'll talk about that when we get back. And in the meantime, thanks for tuning in. The Rivalry Classic Football Show. All the best. Go Blue. OHOIO.
Go Bucks.
If you're a Michigan Wolverine fan, you know there is only one place to go to get all the latest and greatest Michigan and Blue gear from Nike and Jordan brand. That place is, of course, the M-Den, the official merchandise retailer of Michigan Athletics. Make the M-Den your one-stop shop for all your University of Michigan apparel needs. Visit the M-Den today online at www.mden.com. Go Blue.
This is Doug Worthington, former Ohio State captain, and I'm at The College Traditions, where they have the official Nike apparel that the college players and the coaches wear on the sideline. College Tradition has the flags, they have the decals for the cars, they have everything to show your Buckeye pride. Come down, Buckeye Nation. College Tradition has a range for your feline friends and your canine pups that you can come and get them laced up in some of the best Buckeye gear. Being 6'6", 305 pounds, it is hard to find gear in my size. College Traditions has up to 5X in some of your best Buckeye gear. Come get you a lid, curve up that dome with the best hack selection in Columbus, Ohio. College Tradition, all the great apparel, all the great gear, and things for your man cave. Come down, check us out.
At Power Bar, we know you get what you put in. You get the energy and the excitement, the encouragement and the escape, the friendship and the loyalty. You get everything you need and nothing you don't. That's why Power Bar is back with remixed recipes and all new products to help you power on and savor every moment. Welcome to the new us.
Hi, my name is Crystal, and I'm a private client advisor with one of the leading insurance intermediaries for highly successful individuals. Because of our size, we have powerful partnerships with the industry's premier carriers. I specialize in leveraging these relationships to find my clients the most efficient and effective insurance solutions at the best prices. Don't miss out on this opportunity. A consultation with me is at no cost to you. Whether it be for your business or your personal insurance needs, you earned it, and let me help you protect it.
Hey, we're good.
And we're on.
Here we are.
Go ahead, Shem.
Countdown. All right. Hey, we're back. The Rivalry Classic Football Show. This is an exciting night here at the Brown Jug in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And hey, and now we got Boren. He finally shows up.
Look
Congratulations,
look
Boren.
at
Way
you,
to show
Shemy,
up.
holding it down in Ann Arbor, huh? Look at you, Shemy.
So anyway, we'll get to this later. Hey, we want to welcome a dear friend of the program, the great Woody Stover, and his lovely wife, the even better Betsy Stover. We're going to get both of them on the air here. And we want to talk about, so we love to partner with well-deserved nonprofit organizations. And so it's really exciting when we have Ellie's Place. And so I want everybody to go check out elliesplace.com. And Woody and Betsy basically founded this organization. And now Woody was a dear friend of Bo, and going all the way back to when he was coach here. And so Woody's got a couple great stories about Bo, and just to set things up, and then we'll talk about Ellie's Place. Hi, Woody.
Hey, Shim. How are you?
I'm doing great, my friend. Hey, so it's an honor having you here.
All right.
And knowing, yes, it is. And so knowing you're one of the great Michigan men that's ever come down the pike, we just love having you on the show because I don't think that there's too many guys that love Michigan more than you. Correct?
There are a lot of them. I know,
But I think you're the best because you're here.
Yeah, but that's what is that because I'm sitting next to you?
No, it has nothing to do with that. So you were talking about one of your favorite Bo stories that we were there and we were going out to practice. So kind of take us back of what it was like back then. Now this is after Bo was retired, and
Well, this was in this you, me, Fritz, and Bo. It was the Thursday before the Ohio State game.
now real quick, this is Fritz Cypress. So Bo, he coached Fritz into toughness because he was a Connecticut guy, and when he got here, he wasn't all that tough. But Woody made him tough. So keep going.
Yeah, I just hope that's being recorded so Fritzy can see that what you said.
We want Fritz to see this.
Right. Well, we were there. It was a fun, and the four of us were talking, and I remember that spring, Michigan had won the softball national championship, and Jenny Ritter came in, and one of the coolest things about it was your dad started coaching her up immediately, and she was just stunned. She had come in to get something autographed, but she was terrific. It was fun, and then we went to practice, and as I mentioned to you, the coolest thing about practice was as we were walking down, you took your dad's briefcase, and it was really that first moment that I got a little peek into, sort of the seriousness of the challenges he was facing. It was kind of a touching moment, and then we went to practice, and was watching him evaluating practice, and he was giving a lot of lip service to the practices weren't as tough as back when men were men. And
Bo set a pretty high bar, wouldn't you say?
I'd say he set it about as high as it gets. But it was great. But it was great fun. And then he talked to the team, listened to him, and the man can motivate. It's great.
And the idea that he coached everybody. Okay, if he thought anybody need coaching, you didn't have to have pads on to get coaching from Bo Schembechler. Because in many ways he was a life coach. And when you talk about Bo's legacy, and when we talk about the rivalry, we talk about Earl Bruce and Woody Hayes and the impact they had on their players. When you were, if at any point you played for Bo, he was always your coach. All right.
Well, you listen to the players. We had places at the same place on Gasparilla Island in Florida. And for his birthday each year, Mandich and Jimmy Brandstatter, and maybe it was Deerdorf, I don't remember, but he would always say, well, I got to rest up before, and then I got to really rest up afterwards. But he had, he was what Michigan is all about.
and he was tougher than nails. And when you talk about a guy, I mean, he was battling the heart disease at that time. And when you consider he had his first quadruple bypass surgery the day before the 1970 Rose Bowl, and a fight that lasts literally 40 years, and for Bo to fight that fight and to be alive at the right time with innovations in heart disease and research. When you talk about Kim Eagle and Rudy Reichert and the key role that those guys played in preserving his life,
Kim simply said he was one of the toughest patients he ever had, and Kim, proudly kept him alive for a long period, and I think that's really cool.
No doubt. And I think that's special, but that speaks to Bo the patient, because not only was he a great coach, he listened to his doctors. And not everybody does that these days, right, Woody?
Yeah, I'm not sure Bo listened to a ton of people, but but Kim had his ear, that's for sure.
There's no doubt about it. So anyway, just a great pleasure having you on the Rivalry Show. We want to talk about Ellie's Place, because basically we're going to be raising funds for Ellie's Place as a part of the show, particularly when we come here to the Brown Jug. And Perry's Place. Yeah, Perry's Place. Absolutely.
Yeah, what a special spot for guys like me who went to school here. Right. And I have my own memories of the Brown Jug with met Cassie Russell here. So yeah, cool place.
Well, the Brown Jug has a special meaning in multiple ways for us, because not only is this a great place, has great tradition here, we kept that Brown Jug on a pretty regular basis. We never gave it to Minneapolis, correct?
Yeah, right. Yeah, oh yeah. Now I get what you're talking about. I forgot. Yeah, exactly. Well, you get old; the memories are a little tougher to recall.
There's no doubt about that. So, Betsy, now you want to talk about Ellie's Place and how it came to be, and what the motivation of this great organization is. And when I read through it, when we lost Millie, I was still in college back then. And I can tell you, I was still in college, and it was so important to me to come back and be near Bo at that time. And those were the days in which, if I didn't have Bo, I don't know if I'd be in the same place today. Is that you need that family support and you need that encouragement. And not everybody has those types of opportunities. And so I think in some ways, Ellie's Place really fills that void for a lot of people, especially young kids, when they've lost a parent at a very young age, correct?
Lost a parent or a sibling, Ellie's Place is there, and they get introduced to other children just like them who've been through a similar loss, and they come to Ellie's Place and once a week, and they are given permission to feel whatever they're feeling. And the emotion of surviving the death of somebody you love is pretty strong. As adults, we all know that. For kids, they really need permission to be able to begin to address it. And right. Ellie's Place started after our daughter Ellie died at the age of 11 months in 1989. She she struggled and fought and had an incredible will to live, but she died, and Ellie had 3 surviving siblings. And before Woody and I could begin to address our grief, we sort of knew that we had to find something for them, because for the first time in our lives, we realized that if you're young enough to love, you're certainly young enough to grieve, and there was nothing in the community that addressed that. And so lucky circumstance that there was a group of women who began to realize this, and through a hospice pilot program and a course at the community college, we put together a business plan, and Ellie's Place was started. And we certainly didn't want it just to be about our daughter. We wanted it to be about all children who've had the death of a parent or a sibling or a grandparent who's close to them. And so we did that, and we just celebrated 28 years in Lansing. We now have an Ellie's Place in Ann Arbor, which has been here for 10 years. We have been in Grand Rapids for 5 years, and we're also in Flint. And so in 25 years, there was a number given that 25,000 people had been touched and improved by Ellie's Place. So
Betsy, that's awesome. You got something to add? I mean, to me, that was the most perfect presentation for Ellie's Place I've ever heard. Huh?
No, Betsy knows what she's talking about. That's for sure. She's the heart and soul of everything that Ellie's Place represents, and so, pretty damn proud of her.
Well, that's pretty amazing stuff, Betsy, and what an unbelievable legacy that you have left with it. Yeah. Well, Ellie, you talk about how you gain inspiration from adversity, and everybody's going to face adversity at some point. It's all about your attitude and how you attack it. And for you to take the lessons that you learn going through that adversity and to project it for the better good of everybody that's going through these types of issues. So it's really, really important with the work that you're doing. So I want to make perfectly clear to everybody. So we're going to be posting the link to the website so people can find it. We're going to make sure that it is in a prominent role on the Rivalry Facebook page and all of our social media networks. And for all the Michigan and even you Buckeye people, even though we may not, are we in Ohio yet? Well, even though we're not in Ohio, maybe because we can handle grief a lot better than those Buckeyes. So that's why you have to come to Michigan to be able to do that.
Well,
Betsy
was a cornerstone founder of Good Grief in Toledo. Okay.
Which is a program like Ellie's Place that was founded 5 years ago. So Ellie's Place wanted to stay in Michigan. We have a audacious goal of in the next 25 years, there will be no child in Michigan that has to grieve alone. Right. And that doesn't mean there's going to be Ellie's Place in every community, but everybody's going to be aware of the need for that support. Right. So we had to do Michigan before we go anywhere else. Right.
Well, you got to focus on where you're good. All right. And so when you focus your attention on one particular area, one particular demographic, I think that's really important. And so me as a Michigan guy, it's okay if we don't go to Ohio, and in many ways, Toledo, I mean, that's kind of ours anyway. We loaned it to them. Yeah. And so after we turn this rivalry around, we start beating Ohio State on a regular basis after the torture we've gone through the last 20 years. We're happy to claim Toledo under those circumstances, right, Woody?
Yeah, as long as we don't have to beat both Ohio State and the refs, we'll do just fine.
Right, absolutely. I talked about this on a show a ways back because I was complaining about the officiating down there. So I proposed a new collegiate program called the Schembechler School of Officiating. And we've got a series of graduates, and we've got them in line to officiate the game in Columbus this November. Sound like a good plan?
I think sounds like a great plan.
All right, good. Well, hey, we appreciate you guys coming on. We are so proud to partner with Ellie's Place, and we're going to do everything we can to make it the most successful organization in the state of Michigan. All right.
Shemy, thank you so much. And I know that your support means so much to Woody and I personally and to Ellie's Place more globally. But thank you for this opportunity to have this exposure and to gain the support. So thank you.
And your dad would be damn proud of your support here too.
Oh my goodness. Well, and so just my personal story, obviously, we lost Bo well over a decade ago. I can tell you, and we lost Millie, and I can tell you, if we didn't have Bo, if I didn't have Bo at that time, and I said it earlier, I don't know if my life would be quite the same, and to have those 2-3 years at Michigan football when I served as a graduate assistant under both Mo and Lloyd, and to have Bo's office literally right across the hall from mine, that meant everything to me.
So was your office in the recruiting office, right? Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I was right there.
That office was funding for that was from Betsy and myself, right on the wall there.
Here we go. Now it's all coming together, isn't it? This is about as perfect as one can imagine. All right.
Yeah, well, it ties all together.
No doubt.
It all ties together with that day that we were there.
I can tell you, we have no regrets putting in 100+ hours a week during football season in that area. So the fact that you made that donation, we put that to really good use.
Right.
Wonderful. All right, guys. All right. Go Blue. Hey, we're going to take a break, okay? You guys can still hear me okay there, Dr. Boren?
Sure can, Shemy. Sure can up there.
What we want to do, let's take a quick break, and we're going to get back, and we want to talk about, obviously we haven't talked about Ohio State yet. Let's talk about Ohio State and Oregon State, which I call a certified scrimmage, but Dr. Boren's going to provide some insight as to why this is going to be a non-game game. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. The Rivalry Classic Football Show. Go Blue. If you're a Michigan Wolverine fan, you know there is only one place to go to get all the latest and greatest Michigan and blue gear from Nike and Jordan brand. That place is, of course, the M-Den, the official merchandise retailer of Michigan Athletics. Make the M-Den your one-stop shop for all your University of Michigan apparel needs. Visit the M-Den today online at www.mden.com. Go Blue.
This is Doug Worthington, former Ohio State captain, and I'm at The College Traditions, where they have the official Nike apparel that the college players and the coaches wear on the sideline. College Tradition has the flags, they have the decals for the cars, they have everything to show your Buckeye pride. Come down, Buckeye Nation. College Tradition has a range for your feline friends and your canine pups that you can come and get them laced up in some of the best Buckeye gear. Being 6'6", 305 pounds, it is hard to find gear in my size. College Traditions has up to 5X in some of your best Buckeye gear. Come get you a lid, curve up that dome with the best hat selection in Columbus, Ohio. College Tradition, all the great apparel, all the great gear, and things for your man cave. Come down, check us out.
At Power Bar, we know you get what you put in. You get the energy and the excitement, the encouragement and the escape, the friendship and the loyalty. You get everything you need and nothing you don't. That's why Power Bar is back with remixed recipes and all new products to help you power on and savor every moment. Welcome to the new us.
Hi, my name is Crystal, and I'm a private client advisor with one of the leading insurance intermediaries for highly successful individuals. Because of our size, we have powerful partnerships with the industry's premier carriers. I specialize in leveraging these relationships to find my clients the most efficient and effective insurance solutions at the best prices. Don't miss out on this opportunity. A consultation with me is at no cost to you. Whether it be for your business or your personal insurance needs, you earned it, and let me help you protect it.
Rivalry Classic Football Show. Go Blue, go Bucks. How's it going, Dr. Boren?
It's going great. How are you up there in Ann Arbor? I still can't get over that you are at a bar that's called the Brown Jug based off of winning a game against Minnesota. I can't get over that, Shemy.
Well,
like that's like us having a bar in Columbus, Ohio called the Illabuck. It doesn't happen.
Right. Well, you got to understand the Brown Jug is the oldest trophy in all of football, okay? Because it started way back during the Fielding Yost days. I mean, that's longer than you and I put together. Yeah, so we celebrate that trophy because there was a point in time when the Minnesota was the main rivalry for Michigan, not Ohio State. And so the fact that we remember that here in Ann Arbor, I think it's absolutely appropriate. And just because we don't have an award for Ohio State, Michigan, it's good to celebrate something.
Would you agree?
Shemy, I understand it. We just got to get with the times. Just maybe
We're
change
old
it.
school. You know me.
Yeah,
All I care about is
it's
tradition.
old school. But what about Minnesota was the biggest rivalry? I thought Michigan State was. And then some people say it's Ohio State. Some people say it's Notre Dame. I mean, where are we at with rivalries? You can't have a rivalry for every game, Shemy.
Well, I'm not saying the Brown Jug game is a rivalry game because we've been beating the crap out of them for such a long time, and this is over 40 years now.
Okay.
And so my whole plan is, and understand my lineage dating from 1969, I'm always going to be about Michigan and Ohio State, regardless of what the full record is in the Brown Jug game.
Okay, fair enough. That's all I need to hear. You are good.
Yeah. So anyway, I've been claiming. So I was watching all these other Buckeye shows on EBSN with Lehner and Marty and Jake does his own show. Well, all these guys are predicting a landslide victory over the Oregon State Beavers, and the line's 39 points.
I believe so.
How is this not a scrimmage? That's what I want to know.
Some people may view it as a scrimmage. You see some of these games week one, Texas A&M's playing with whoever, New Mexico State tonight. You see some of these, lower level games. It very well may be. Here's the thing, though. This is still a Pac-12 football team. This is still a major Division I Power 5 team that is still out there recruiting, gets the same amount of scholarships as everyone else. So, they're going to come in here and I think be somewhat competitive to start with because it's week one of the season, but still at the same time, they're going to be overmatched by this Ohio State football team.
There's no doubt in my mind. And so when I go through and I look at the coaching staff at Oregon State, isn't that the guy that left Wisconsin?
It is.
Isn't that the same guy?
It is.
How is he a good coach?
Well, he actually, if I may jump in, you're talking about Gary Anderson, and he quit last year after going 1-5. They started 1-5, and he quit.
He quit. Okay.
Right.
So he quit. So he's not even there.
Yeah, don't let the door hit you in the rear end on the way out. And so now he's at Oregon State. How is he going to revive that program when he quits mid-season like that?
I think he quit mid-season at Oregon State last year. He's not even coming back as a coach this year. They have a whole new coaching staff. So they can't.
It's not Gary Anderson anymore.
No,
okay.
he quit halfway through the year. So this is.
So basically, you have the leftovers of a coach who quit, which kills the recruiting, and now they can't field a team this year because of it.
That is correct. They're coming in with a somewhat new coaching staff, and they're also coming in with the worst defense in the Pac-12 last year in a conference that doesn't even play defense very well. So they are coming in with the last ranked defense in the Pac-12 in 2017.
Right.
Trying to come into a hostile environment in Columbus, Ohio on week one of college football season.
Right.
And it's just the odds aren't stacked up very well against them.
Yeah, they're here for the paycheck.
They are. There is a paycheck. But let's be honest. We're seeing a scrimmage. If Oregon State was playing Michigan this weekend, we would be saying the same thing. It would.
I agree.
Just Oregon State is not on the same level as essentially. Honestly, Oregon State would be in last in the Big Ten each and every year.
Right.
They would not even be able to compete with the Rutgers, Indiana's, Purdue's of the Big Ten.
Right. Well, I think it's depressing. Because, and I blame Gene Smith. I mean, everybody's mad at Gene Smith about all this investigation with Urban Meyer. I'm more mad at him because he can't put a good schedule together of some competitive teams to get this Buckeye team ready for the Big Ten season.
Shemy, you don't think playing TCU at Dallas Cowboys Stadium is a big game?
Well, that's much better, but that's the only game that I got. I mean, I get on Delaney, the Big Ten commissioner, for bringing Rutgers into the league. They don't deserve to be in this league.
No, I agree with you. But if we're going to talk about marquee preseason games, there's a lot of big teams that aren't playing them.
I'll give you that. I'm looking forward to the TCU game because that's basically a road game for Ohio State.
No, I completely agree with you. I think that's going to be a very strong test on the road. Down in Dallas Cowboys Stadium, and they're a top 15 team in the country, Shemy.
So basically, we're going to be talking about TCU for the next 2 weeks. We're going to skip over the preview of Oregon State and Rutgers.
Yeah, we will, but it's kind of the same way with Michigan. Michigan has Notre Dame, and then who else do they really have until Big Ten play?
Nobody really. But the truth of the matter is, if you're gonna start a tough schedule, you might as well start it at the very beginning. You know,
Shemy,
what type of
you
team is SMU this year, by the way?
you being a Michigan man and a Schembechler, I expect you to make smarter comments than that. What is the difference between week 1 and week 3 of the season? There's no difference. Honestly, I honestly wish Michigan would have played Notre Dame the same weekend Ohio State and TCU play.
Well, you know the television networks are going to block that. They're not going to put 2 good games on at the same time.
I agree with you, but
I'm going to tell you about the Michigan schedule. Now, the truth of the matter is, they got Western Michigan the week after, and make no mistake, there's still a lot of PJ Flex players in that system, and they're one of the top teams in the Mid-American Conference year in and year out, just based on that. And the truth of the matter is,
Shemy, they took a hit last year. They were not the same team last year that they were in 2016.
Right, but I'm talking about personnel, players. They had a guy drafted in the first round last year.
Yeah, they lost Corey Davis, who was a great player.
Is still there. Now, I have yet to study Western Michigan, but we'll get to them, and I'll understand where they are. I think it's more important to talk about, this particular game. We'll talk about Notre Dame here shortly.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I just think
real quick on the Michigan Notre Dame thing. I'm not saying it that I wish it was later because Michigan would be able to get some fluff games before that. I'm not saying that. I am saying that because I honestly believe I am sitting here right now thinking 48 hours from now, Michigan is going to dominate the game against Notre Dame. I honestly believe that, as I know you do as well. So
I think it's going to be tough early, but go ahead.
Yeah. So here's my thing, though. The experts later on in the year, I am always a huge fan of the Big Ten being really good because I don't think the Big Ten gets enough respect that they should across the country. And I think this game is going to come down to later on in the year, the media, the national media, come ranking time when the first ever college football rankings come out, are going to say that they don't give as big of a win in their eyes to Michigan for winning at Notre Dame because it was week 1 of the season and anything can happen in week 1. So what I'm saying is week 3, if Michigan beats Notre Dame, which I think would happen again, week 3, the national media doesn't have the excuse to say it was week 1 of the season, that Notre Dame's a completely different team then. Game 3, you have 2 games underneath your belt. You were working on your identity. You have, the kinks better be out. So if Michigan goes to South Bend week 3 and absolutely throttles them, which I think is going to happen Saturday, they don't have an excuse to say, hey, Notre Dame, just wasn't, they just didn't have their stuff together week 1. That excuse isn't out there.
Well, here's my thought, all right? And I like to look at this in terms of a personnel matchup. And I'm looking at Notre Dame offensively and defensively. Defensively, they return the vast majority of their personnel, particularly in their front 7.
Yes.
They are losing some pieces in the back half of their secondary. And I think the interesting matchup that's going to be is not necessarily in the running attack. It's going to be Shea Patterson's ability to pick apart the corners at Notre Dame. And they're going to be playing a lot of off coverage. And when you play off coverage, Zach, the key is how are you going to utilize your tight ends? Now, I think Michigan's tight ends are amongst the best in the Big Ten because you got Gentry and then you got McCune. Those guys are going to be so key in this game, particularly if the offensive line can provide enough protection for them. But with Shea, I think there's going to be a lot of short passes early in this game so that we can set up the run for later on, okay? Because we want to get our best player that is the most sure of himself, that has the most confidence involved in the game early, and that's going to be Shea Patterson on the offensive side of the ball, all right? The fact that we lost Tariq Black is a problem, but when we go back and look at Roy Roundtree in terms of his importance and the coaching staff and his insight, I think with Donovan Peoples-Jones as well as the Oliver kid, I think that's going to be key for Michigan to get the short passing game going. so that we can establish the running attack. Because one of the concerns I have, and we're going to be talking about this throughout the year, is how are Michigan's tackles going to develop in terms of being able to run the football. I really believe in Cesar Ruiz, and I believe in Onwenu, or if we go with the other kid at guard, but then with Bredesen at left guard, we're going to have a chance to run the football. But I think as we go into a hostile environment, I think passing to get down the field to score quickly is going to be really critical for the Michigan offense. As we look at the defensive side of the ball, you know, I honestly believe when you have a quarterback in Notre Dame that is consistently a 49% completion guy going against one of the very top secondaries to stop the pass in all of college football last year, Notre Dame's going to do what they can to try to establish the running game early in the game, all right? The thing that interests me about Notre Dame, they've always recruited really good offensive linemen, all right? And they got a lot of their guys back, but they lost their two best interior offensive linemen, the center and guard, that both went in the first round, all right? Michigan's key is stopping the run early in this game so that we can set up the pass, because there's no doubt in my mind Brian Kelly is taking a look at a two-quarterback system at Notre Dame and saying, we have to do what we can to run the football. If we can't, we are going to pull one quarterback for the other because we don't necessarily believe in either one of them. Make sense, guys?
Shemy, I couldn't agree with you more. I think you hit the entire scouting report perfectly, which is why I think from Michigan's perspective, they're going to go in and dominate the game. I'm going to dive into it a little bit more and saying Shea Patterson takes the Michigan's offense to a whole different level. I don't think Michigan has had a quarterback like Shea Patterson in a very long time. And I think that is what has set Michigan football back for so long, is they haven't had a playmaking, dynamic quarterback like they are going to have in Shea Patterson. You mentioned the front seven of Notre Dame is still kind of intact, but their secondary, they've lost some. They've got new guys coming in, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think Coach Harbaugh is going to be great with getting Shea Patterson with short passes, getting them going early, which is totally going to free up the secondary of Notre Dame and is going to open up the passing game, which in turn, what do we know? Open up the passing game, opens up the run game, right? We know that in Michigan has always been known to run the football under Jim Harbaugh. Doesn't matter who they go up against, they will run the football. So as soon as they start passing it, they will start dominate the line of scrimmage and go back to the run. In regards to Michigan's defense is one of the best in the country. I may say that Michigan and Ohio State's defense are both within the top 5 in the entire country. From a playmaking standpoint and an all-around defense, those two defenses are easily, in my mind, one of the top 5, or both in the top 5. When you talk about them, when you talk about Notre Dame,
I agree.
When you talk about Notre Dame losing their two interior offensive linemen, their first-round draft picks, you have a guy named Rashawn Gary for the University of Michigan that will absolutely dominate the line of scrimmage against Notre Dame. And I think I think that is where you're going to see the difference, is that Notre Dame will not be able to contain him, and you'll see him start dominating the line of scrimmage, which then they're going to have to be forcing to pass the ball in quick passes. And like you said, you've got quarterbacks who Brian Kelly doesn't even know he's going to go with. The quarterbacks there are not the same quarterbacks he's had in the past. Their big question mark is their offense, especially from a Brian Kelly standpoint. He's an offensive guy. And for him to have big question marks at offense tells you that things are not very good in South Bend right now.
I couldn't agree more. And so there's another thing that I want you to keep in mind. With the incoming Shea Patterson at quarterback, do not be surprised, Zach, if you're going to see some elements of RPO, okay? Because we already know that Shea Patterson he's adept at getting outside the pocket and being accurate on the run, okay? I think that Harbaugh is going to be smart, because if you're going to take the Notre Dame home field advantage out of the game, is you put Patterson on the move via RPO, because I don't think they're going to go as much under center as what a typical Harbaugh offense has been in the past, because they understand what they have in Shea Patterson. So when you can, because I think Notre Dame's front seven's pretty stout, all right? I think they're going to create some pressure points coming off the edge because I'm still not settled on the Michigan tackles yet. I believe in Ed Warner and his ability to develop talent. I'm concerned about the overall talent at the tackles as well as lack of experience, all right? This is going to be a group that's going to have to develop over the season, and there's going to be some lumps early in the year, I predict. But I think the key is how do they get through the game in South Bend in prime time in a hostile environment where the crowd is going to be involved early. And I think we're going to have to leverage Shea Patterson more than we normally would as we progress through the season.
Yeah, I agree with you, Shemy, but you made another good point. Look at this. Ohio State Michigan guys agreeing on something, right? Here's another thing.
Well, we're smart guys. You know, you're a heck of a lot better than Worthington was because he never looked at the game. This is what happens when you got linemen doing the show. Now, we love Worthington a lot, but this is one of the reasons we got you on here, Boren.
There you go.
Because we study.
We do. We study.
But Worthington's listening to this. This is going to be perfect.
But like you said, Shemy, is you have Ed Warner, who was a coach at Ohio State when I was there and coached my little brother, and is one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. He is a great technical offensive line coach, so he will have those guys ready to go. But like you said, I totally see the RPO going because if you have any question in your mind about your offensive line, the way they're going to react on a hostile environment on the road week one, you hit the defense with RPOs, and they can't get any kind of feel for what's going on. And RPO nowadays is one of the hardest plays to stop, especially if you have a playmaking quarterback like Shea Patterson. It is what Ohio State has lived on under Coach Meyer, which is why you've seen so many dynamic quarterbacks come through the Urban Meyer system here at Ohio State.
Right, no doubt. And I got to tell you, now that we're talking about Ohio State's quarterback, this kid – he could be the most accurate drop-back passer that Urban Meyer has ever had anywhere in his coaching career because he made some plays up here in Ann Arbor that brought Ohio State back, which I believe if J.T. Barrett doesn't get hit, Ohio State probably loses this game. And I think the kid's got a load of talent. But the thing about him is you're now the guy for the first time, and you know that you have to establish some level of leadership qualities, and it takes a little bit extra outside of just being able to throw the ball accurately. But like I said, in many ways, for him, and I said this a couple weeks ago, it's almost like that quarterback would be better served playing in a pro-style system than a spread. And so but regardless of whether he's in shotgun or under center, he's still going to be able to stand back there, see over into the secondary with his great height, and he can make every throw physically you can imagine.
I completely agree with you, but I also think an Urban Meyer system, everyone sees it as a, spread, RPO type system, but Urban Meyer's offense can be somewhat of a pro-style, run downhill power offense just in a gun formation. He just goes out a gun instead of being under eye. It's the same exact offense. And you talk about leadership. He is. He's a great kid. Great kid. Will take control of the huddle. Already is doing that from all the people I've talked to. He's one of the, like you said, he probably is the best arm Coach Meyer's ever had as a quarterback in all of his time of coaching. But this is what I do know. You have Mike Weber and J.K. Dobbins standing next to him in the backfield. And in my mind, those two are two of the top 5 running backs in the entire country, and they're both on the same team.
I know.
I mean, if those guys are on 2 separate teams, I think both of those guys are in New York for the Heisman Trophy.
Right. That's why I think, because I'm old school enough, Zach, you know this. I would much rather have a fullback and a tight end with 22 personnel running the football every down, not running it out of spread.
Shemy, that's why you and I get along so well.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Well, you're the fullback, Mike linebacker, so all this makes sense.
Let's play the game in a phone booth the way it's supposed to be played, Shemy.
Yeah, where men were men.
Exactly.
Jack?
Right.
We're going to build character each and every snap.
Yep. No doubt.
All right. Good deal. Well, hey, let's take a quick break. We want to thank our sponsors, obviously, with Premier Nutrition, MDen. I got my MDen gear right now. John Roman's Construction, College Traditions. We're going to be at College Traditions next week, as well as Brown & Brown. So when we come back, let's do the commercials. When we get back, we're going to have MGO blog writer, dear friend of Michigan football, Steve Kornacki, has got a new book out, and apparently he was smart enough to let me write the foreword for it. So we're going to talk about that when we get back and get his impressions of the Michigan team and what he thinks of Ohio State, if he cares at all. All right? Zach,
he better care, Shemy.
Well, we'll try to convince him while he's here,
There
okay?
you go.
He's selling a boatload of books over here right now, so we'll tell him to take time out to come over and talk to us to talk about his book, all right? All right, we'll be right back. The Rivalry Classic Football Show. Go Blue.
If you're a Michigan Wolverine fan, you know there is only one place to go to get all the latest and greatest Michigan and blue gear from Nike and Jordan brand. That place is, of course, the M-Den, the official merchandise retailer of Michigan athletics. Make the M-Den your one-stop shop for all your University of Michigan apparel needs. Visit the M-Den today online at www.mden.com. Go Blue.
This is Doug Worthington, former Ohio State captain, and I'm at The College Traditions, where they have the official Nike apparel that the college players and the coaches wear on the sideline. College Tradition has the flags, they have the decals for the cars, they have everything to show your Buckeye pride. Come down, Buckeye Nation. College Tradition has a range for your feline friends and your canine pups that you can come and get them laced up in some of the best Buckeye gear. Being 6'6", 305 pounds, it is hard to find gear in my size. College Traditions have up to 5X in some of your best Buckeye gear. Come get you a lid, curve up that dome with the best hack selection in Columbus, Ohio. College Tradition, all the great apparel, all the great gear, and things for your man cave. Come down, check us out.
At Power Bar, we know you get what you put in. You get the energy and the excitement, the encouragement and the escape, the friendship and the loyalty. You get everything you need and nothing you don't. That's why Power Bar is back with remixed recipes and all new products to help you power on and savor every moment. Welcome to the new us.
Hi, my name is Crystal, and I'm a private client advisor with one of the leading insurance intermediaries for highly successful individuals. Because of our size, we have powerful partnerships with the industry's premier carriers. I specialize in leveraging these relationships to find my clients the most efficient and effective insurance solutions at the best prices. Don't miss out on this opportunity. A consultation with me is at no cost to you. Whether it be for your business or your personal insurance needs, you earned it, and now let me help you protect it.
Okay, we're back. Rivalry Classic Football Show. Michigan, Ohio State, the greatest rivalry in the history of all sports. Even Urban Meyer says that.
Because
Isn't
it's
that
true.
amazing?
It's true, Shemy.
It is true. But he says in the history of sport, like sport is plural. I always found that to be interesting, right, Zach?
Yeah, you know.
It's all good. Hey, we are welcomed by dear friend of the program, a very good friend of the Schembechler family, the great Steve Kornacki, who was a longtime established writer for
the Ann Arbor News.
Ann Arbor News.
And then the Detroit Free.
Yeah. So this is really important now because you may remember Bo's relationship with the media was not always real good. You know, like he wouldn't answer certain questions, and it's hard to be in the media as a writer enough where you get hired by the athletic department. So we have Steve Kornacki, which has basically shattered all the records when it comes to that. I don't think there's ever going to be anybody that's get hired on from the newspaper other than you, Steve.
You never know.
You never know.
It's a great honor. It's
well, you're the first, you know. And the funny thing is, I can see Bo telling me, hey, that's a really good move. You got Kornacki.
I love that.
You know what I mean?
I love that. Your dad was so wonderful to me.
Yeah.
We didn't get off to a great start.
Of course not. None of you did.
No.
Tell the story about how you started off on a rough start, which is typical for any writer.
Well, I think initially it was the fact that I was new.
That
was
right.
Your dad wasn't
Move his mic closer to his mouth, Shem.
You had to earn
your stripes. And I would write about recruiting, and your dad didn't want me to write about recruiting, and he'd say, sometimes I'm in the kids. I don't want to do your dad. I shouldn't do that on your show.
Just tell us what he
Okay.
said.
Okay. So your dad, and you will interpret it. Your dad would say, I'm in the kids' living room, and you call, and you know where we are, and our opponents know where we are, and you're killing our recruiting. And I said, well, that's not my job. My job is we got these rabid. Oh my goodness, Michigan boosters from that era were on the phone all the time with me, want to know everything. And I put it out. There wasn't a website then. You had to wait for the paper to come out. And I was, I was all over it. I broke the stories on the guys that were going to come. And then this is a really long story. So
make it short.
I'm going to make it short. But the bottom line was something happened that irritated Andre Rison.
I got no problem with that.
Who your dad really wanted. And something I wrote irritated Rison to the point where your dad called me up one day at the Ann Arbor News Building, which is now Michigan Credit Union. And he said, you cost me Andre Rison blank.
Well, see, this is funny because it's so funny he mentions Andre Rison because I remember Bo used to go down to the basement at our house to make recruiting calls. And this is before cell phones, obviously. Yeah. So he's got the rotary phone and all that stuff. And I used to sit down and listen to him. Well, one of those calls was Andre Rison. Oh, my goodness. All right. And so my history, you got to understand, my history with Andre Rison goes back then, but also fast forward. Okay. And so I'm of the opinion, and I like Andre, all right? But Andre, in all honesty, never would have fit into our locker room, okay?
No, you're right.
And the thing that happened with him was, so I'm in Kansas City, and I'm scouting for the Chiefs. Well, we signed Andre Rison. He becomes our Pro Bowl player right off the bat, and Andre is going to get whatever he wants, all right? And I remember I was a scouting assistant, all right? And so I'm usually making all the airport runs. Now, Zach, you're going to get a kick out of this, buddy. And so one day I get a call from my boss and says, you got to go to the airport and pick up Andre's ex-girlfriend, Lisa Left Eye Lopes. All right. Now, the thing that's amazing about this, guys, this is after she burned his house down. You got it. So he brings her back to Kansas City, and I'm sitting there with the car. And I will tell you this, I was petrified. I was petrified to say anything the whole time. And so, there's Andre Rison for you, all right? The woman that burns his house down, he brings her back to Kansas City for a football weekend.
He's got another house. Huh? He's got another house.
Well, yeah. Well, back then he could afford all these houses. And like I said, I like Andre a lot. But I don't know if I'm going to trust Andre Rison's choices from time to time. All right. All right. How about that one, Zach?
Shemy, if Andre Rison went to University of Michigan, your opinion of him would say he was the greatest wide receiver of all time.
Yeah, but Zach, he goes to Michigan State. They never beat us, so we don't care.
I know.
Right?
I know. I'm just saying. You know, your opinion on Andre Rison would have been completely different if he went to Michigan.
Let's just say this: if Andre had come to Michigan and signed his letter of intent to go to Michigan, he probably would have turned out to be a guy that doesn't have all these issues. Bo would have been all over him to make sure that you're not associated with women that are going to burn your house down.
I'm not doubting that, but come on, we all see we all see people nowadays that have issues with women.
Anyway, well, hey, so we want to support Steve Kornacki. He's got a great book out. And this is really a wonderful family affair. So the name of the book is Miracle Moments in Michigan Wolverines Football History. Why Steve asked me to write the foreword, but I will say it's a pretty darn good foreword. It's a good foreword. But the thing that makes it special, this is truly a father and son work. His son, Derek, who is an aspiring writer and media guru, became part of this. So it's almost like you're developing his acumen. Say, hey, we're going to write a book together.
Yeah, we're co-authors, Derek and I, and he studied screenwriting in college, and he He's working on a children's book now. So it's gotten things rolling for him, and he covered Michigan as a blogger in the early Harbaugh years, and got his feet into sports, and does a great job. I'm so proud of him. Read the introduction to the book. He wrote it, and it touches on a lot of things. But I'm just so pleased that I wrote it with my son, and you wrote the foreword, and your dad was the most unique person I've ever been around, and I cherished the friendship that we developed. And father and son, that's a very special element to the book, which goes from Yost and the writing of the victors and how Michigan taught Notre Dame how to play football, all the way up to Bo. And then it keeps going all the way up to Jim Harbaugh coaching with national championships and Heisman Trophy winners in between. We interviewed 29 coaches and players. And I'm really proud of a line of a chapter your dad would have loved called The Block M. It's about the offensive line history. A lot of Jerry Hanlon, a lot of Dan Deerdorf, a lot of Jim Brandstatter, a lot of Steve Everett, a lot of the great guys who have really made Michigan football go. That they don't win Heisman's. They don't become as popular as Braylon Edwards, who we have a chapter on.
Unless you talk to somebody like me.
Yeah. This guy knows that the offensive line and the defensive lines win football games. Those are the guys. I always laugh when a football team drafts a wide. Okay, you draft second or third, right? So you were bad, and your second or third overall pick is a wide receiver. That's as dumb as anything I've ever thought of, because you don't have a team. How can you even get? You've got to have a line to block for the quarterback. Then you've got to have a quarterback. Then you need the receiver. But teams that draft receivers that high, that unless it's a team that's really strong and just lucked into the draft pick, it doesn't make any sense. The linemen are the guys who make it go.
Well, it's kind of funny that you talk about linemen because, and you know this, Zach, this is even true during the Earl and Woody years, all right? Even if you got recruited to go to Michigan or Ohio State as a wide receiver, you weren't a wide receiver. You were the blocking end, right, Zach?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Up until what, the late 80s, 90s, right? I mean, were really –
So I can give you the Michigan perspective. All that changed with the arrival of, in my opinion, still Michigan's greatest wide receiver, Anthony Carter.
You know what, Shemy, funny story you say that. I was about to say Anthony Carter broke all the rules because I grew up watching Michigan film of my father in the early 1980s playing with Anthony Carter, and Anthony Carter dominated football games. The number one, he gave the number one to the University of Michigan. Number one became a whole different animal once Anthony Carter wore it.
You nailed it, and it was so funny because there's so many stories about my dad and Anthony almost quit one year, and he had to send Bob Thornblade down there to go bring him back and all that stuff, and just show you how much Bo loved Anthony. He was the only player in Michigan history where he actually called him Shemy. He called him my name. Well, that should tell you how much he loved AC, okay? Now, AC, he's one of the most timid personalities you'll ever want to meet. He's almost like this sweet little kid. He's always been that way. And Bo treated him like he was this little toy that he loved and was almost like having a stuffed animal in Michigan football because he loved him so much. But the thing about AC is you get him out there on that field, Zach, and he scored a touchdown every 3.5 times. He just touched the ball, and he caught everything. But the thing that Bo loved about him, AC never weighed anything more than 175 pounds his entire career here, and yet he would go out there and block his tail off just so he could make Bo happy, and so that puts Bo over the moon for AC.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I like I said, I grew up when I learned football, when my dad was showing me the ways to play football, and I was watching his film from when he played. I grew up watching Anthony Carter, and it was honestly one of the probably, when I was a little kid, one of the greatest days of my entire life when I was growing up was the day that I first met Anthony Carter up at a University of Michigan football game. Yeah. And it just kind of put life in perspective, right? Like, this is a guy that I've watched so much football on, and I finally meet him in person. You know, it's kind of the same thing with your dad, right? Whenever we come up there, we'd always see your dad, and every single time it was still, oh my God, I'm meeting Bo Schembechler, who I grew up idolizing. You know, he's that guy that once you get the first glimpse of football, that's who he is.
No doubt. So anyway, now Steve, I got my copy here. I actually want to get my copy signed if it's all possible. So we want you to tell people where do people get the book?
You can get the book at Barnes & Noble in Southeast Michigan. And if you are not in Southeast Michigan and they don't have it in your store, Barnes & Noble can order it for you. You can go on Amazon. You can go to Skyhorse Publishing. You can send me a letter.
Hey, we'll put Steve's email address on the website. We'll get him in deep and dire trouble. He'll get hammered with emails for orders.
I think that I'm pretty sure the M-Dens are carrying them too, but I have not been. I'm going to go in the next day or two, but I'm pretty sure M-Dens have them.
All right, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Anything you want to leave the folks with in regards to why they need to get this book?
I think because if you love Michigan football like I do and like my son do, you will love the book. There's two things in the introduction that are really cool. One is Jim Brandstatter's take on why Michigan tradition is important to him. And to me, it's some of the best words in the book coming from Jim. And what he said was, wherever they are now, Yost and Harmon and all these great Wolverines, wherever they are, when they look down at the boys coming out of the tunnel, they can be proud today. And then my son wrote a chapter, beginning of the introduction, about meeting Bo with his brother in the office over at what is now Weidenbach Hall on a sultry summer day. And there's a really funny story involved in it. Your dad let him hold the Big Ten championship trophy. And there's a really good story about the handshake. I'm not going to ruin it. That my son had chocolate all over his fingers. And your dad sticks out. I guess I am going to ruin the story. So your dad sticks out his hand, and my son's going, I'm shaking Bo Schembechler's hand, and there's chocolate all over my hand. What do I do? And so he kind of like dead fished Bo, you know? Right. And so Bo looks at him and says, son, when you shake hands with a man, you look him in the eye and you give him a good firm handshake. Right. And then, you know, just how you can't touch college football like this anymore. You know, my sons got to experience a lot of what I did by just bumping into people like your dad, or bumping into Steve Everett or Desmond Howard or whoever, you know, and so I think it's an intimate family story of Michigan football. I think that's what will appeal to people.
Well, goodness gracious, it sounds like Michigan football should be in your family. Okay, so I think even it's like a family memoir in essence. And so we want to thank Steve for coming on the Rivalry Show. We are most certainly going to track this book and its progress, and we wish you all the greatest success. And hopefully, after we beat Ohio State this November, the book sales will go through the roof. What do you think?
That would guarantee it.
All right.
That would guarantee it.
All right. We make no apologies to you, Boren.
Shemy, the Boren family didn't get a phone call to be interviewed in that book. Come on. I thought we had something to do with some Michigan football.
Well, hey, we're going to blame Rich Rod for all that, okay?
Come on, that could have been a good chapter on how how the Boren family turned from Michigan people to Ohio State men.
Steve just said he covered your dad when he was a writer. So there was a day.
Yeah, missed tackles left and right.
Exactly. This is why your dad, I think he's still the 5th leading tackler in Michigan history. Isn't that correct?
Hey, Bo loved him. Bo just gave him the tack on tackles, you know? Hey, he piled on.
Yeah.
They give him assists.
Well, you know where Bo was really good at, Zach, and I've always appreciated this. He always found these Mike linebackers that Ohio State didn't want and turned them into all Big Ten performers.
No doubt. You're right.
I think your dad was no exception, because it was the same thing with Cannavino.
Yeah.
I mean, Earl Bruce standing down there timing a 40-yard dash, and Andy Cannavino goes down there and runs a 5.4, whatever he does. You're not fast enough to play here. And so Bo basically used that as motivation to make Andy Cannavino one of the greatest captains in Michigan history, because he told him Ohio State had no interest in him.
Shemy, that's the same story as my dad.
I know,
It's
exactly.
the same exact story. My dad wanted to go to Ohio State, huge Ohio State fan, ran a 40-yard dash. Earl Bruce was timing it. He ran a 5 flat or something like that. Earl Bruce said, you're not fast enough to play at Ohio State. Bo called him the very next day, he was recruiting him, said, I heard what happened to you at camp. You're going to come to Michigan, and we're going to beat Ohio State's ass every year.
And that's what we did.
That was it. That's all my dad needed.
That's funny. All right, awesome. Hey, thanks, Steve.
You got it, Shep.
Really appreciate it, brother. All right. Hey, we want to jump into this next segment. All right. So I run a company called GES Advisory Company, and you can find us at gesadvisory.com. And basically, we are bringing the NFL scouting model to high school football to help kids improve, number one, and get recruited, number two. So throughout the year, we're going to have a GES High School Player of the Week. And this week, we are honored to have the great Chris Kaminsky, quarterback at South Lyon East High School, where he basically led his team, South Lyon East, over a pretty good program, Waterford Kettering, which has had great tradition over there. He threw for 11 of 18, completed 61% of his passes for 2 touchdowns, and they took him out at halftime because they throttled Kettering 48-0. And so he's going to be our high school player of the week this week. They are literally playing tonight as we speak. That's why we couldn't get him on the show. But we want to congratulate Chris Kaminsky on a great senior season. He's getting recruited by several schools right now, and he's an outstanding student. He's carrying a 3.8 GPA. I believe is a 26 on his ACT. He's going to go on and play college football, and there's going to be a college program that's going to be very fortunate to have him. So that's going to be really cool. Good job, Chris Kaminsky. Zach, I think it's really important, particularly as you and I kick off the inaugural show of the Rivalry as we're leading up to the first weekend. Kind of talk to us just about your family history a little bit, about just the whole growing up Ohio State and having 3 outstanding brothers that all played at Ohio State, the first starting at Michigan. Tell me what the Rivalry means to you, Zach.
Yeah, it means everything. That's why you and I are very similar, and that's why we're doing the show together, is because we both understand this rivalry inside and out. Obviously I grew up here in Columbus, Ohio. Both my parents being University of Michigan grads, I grew up on Michigan football. I grew up, I was born in 91. I grew up loving the sport and watching my dad's games, the films that he had, and grew up being a huge Charles Woodson, Anthony Thomas, Tom Brady fan. They're in the late 90s where that's what we loved. We loved Michigan football. Right. We would, during the fall, my parents would take us out of school early on a Friday at 10 a.m. and we'd drive up to Ann Arbor for a weekend, right? And that's just what we lived for during the fall. And then, just being in Columbus, Ohio, obviously about the rivalry very soon, especially being a Michigan family and living in Columbus, Ohio. You get it, right? You understand from the very beginning what that rivalry is all about and what you're not liked, right? And so it's kind of cool how we become full circle. And now that, we live in Columbus, Ohio, and we're Buckeyes through and through. Now, we've been on both sides of the rivalry. Not many people can say that, right? Especially a rivalry. You are on one side or the other. And to be able to be on both sides of the railroad tracks and travel to Ann Arbor and play in Ann Arbor where, I grew up going, and now coming to Ohio State and being able to go to those games and play in the Horseshoe, that game meant the most to me. I mean, each and every year, everyone circles a game, whether they go home to their hometown or, their family's coming in for a big game. To me, it was always Ohio State, Michigan. It was always after Thanksgiving. No doubt. My extended family would come to my parents' house for Thanksgiving, and we would just talk football. That game was 48 hours from then, and we knew that, it was going to be a bloodbath. And my dad always said, he told us this when we were young, before he even knew that we'd play college football. He said, going into that game, it doesn't matter if that team is 0-11 or 11-0. He goes, there and coming to that game, and it is going to be the hardest game you have ever played in your entire life that year. You're going to act like every time you play, you're going to say that game was the hardest game I've ever played. So to me, my senior year, would be the hardest game I've ever played in my entire life. And my dad will tell you that his senior year was the hardest game he's ever played in his entire life because
No
it
doubt.
just leaves a lasting memory on you of the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into that game. It doesn't
Right.
matter how hard you hit 10 times harder in that game. It doesn't
No
matter
doubt.
how big first down conversions are. They're 10 times bigger in that game. It's just the way
No
it
doubt.
is. That's what the game is built up to be.
No doubt. And just every game is so under the microscope. And when you talk about you throw out the records, there is no game in college football today where you throw out the records more so than this one. And the reason why I've always loved the rivalry, okay, obviously growing up and hearing my dad talk about what it was like to play for Woody Hayes at Miami of Ohio and what it was like to actually become a GA in 1950 for Woody Hayes, because as soon as Bo got coached by Woody Hayes at Miami, he knew he wanted to coach. And it's that whole idea of coaching and player development and being demanding and being tough and being accountable. That's what this series is really all about. And so my dad used to tell me, and you'll appreciate this, Zach, is you train and you battle and you fight and you spend 364 days out of the year preparing for this game. All right. If you're fortunate enough to win this game, you knew you have earned it. All right. And that goes for both teams, you know, because Bo knew the type of program that Woody and Earl ran. Woody knew the type of program because it was the same program that they ran. Bo brought the same thing to Michigan football. So I always think it's amazing how, and even today, how the programs, the persona of each program mirrors each other. Okay. We understand as Michigan people, the series hasn't turned out quite the way we wanted it to over the last 2 decades, but I'm of a certain confidence that the personality of Michigan football is really what Bo is all about. Okay. If Bo were here today, he would talk about Rashawn Gary and Chase Winovich and all those great defensive players and how that was the recipe that would allow Michigan to compete for a championship. And I think these teams, they resemble that. And one of the things, now everybody's talking about Urban, but one of the great things about Urban Meyer is how much he shows reverence for the guys that coached before him. Obviously, with Earl Bruce providing him an opportunity to break into coaching. And I just think it's appropriate when you have coaches like Harbaugh and Urban Meyer, guys that got their start in coaching because of Michigan and Ohio State. This is what really makes this series special. And there was a period of time, this is nothing against Rich Rod at all right? But to me,
it's all against Rich Rod, Shemy.
I know that. But I want to keep all this in perspective is that when you coach at Michigan, it's better when you have been a part of it in the past, whether it's a player, graduate assistant, coach, you grew up in Columbus. You have to have some tangible relationship with either school if you really want to understand the culture and how to establish that culture in your program so you can compete at the highest level that you can.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think the whole reason why Michigan has, let's say, been unsuccessful in the last decade. Really,
2 decades.
Yeah, 2 decades, Shemy. But let's be honest. From when Lloyd Carr was there, they were still putting out a great team. They were still having very competitive Ohio State Michigan matchups. Number one versus number two, maybe the greatest game in all of college football. Right.
Right.
Really, the last decade is when they've been slipping, and it really hasn't been games. It hasn't even been a competition. And it really started with Rich Rod. He set that program back so far because he didn't understand it. Nothing against Rich Rod. That's a whole different conversation. But just from a understanding the rivalry standpoint, he did not understand it.
Right. I agree 1,000%. And so now that we have people that do get it, and one of the things, and this is one of the other things I've always revered, is the great assistant coaches that have coached at both schools, okay?
Yep.
I always find it fascinating when you consider coaches that have coached both at Ohio State and Michigan. I mean, we talk about Ed Warner, but we can go back down through the years. Chuck Stobart was on the Ohio State staff, serving with my dad back in the 70s. Same thing with Elliot Uzelak. He was a longtime Michigan guy. And it's almost like there's many of these coaches that are interchangeable in many ways because they understand the series and the rivalry the way it should.
Yep.
And if there's one thing, and I know you know this implicitly, when you talk about the mark of a great head coach is what type of assistants does he have on his team? And so with Urban Meyer, I mean, when you have guys like Larry Johnson and Greg Schiano and guys like that on the staff, those guys know and understand what it's like to be on this series, and they've been successful coaches pretty much wherever they've been. And it just makes sense that they come to places like Michigan and Ohio State because they want that they want that feel about what college football is all about. And to me, that's why the Michigan-Ohio State game is always going to be on a higher level than everybody else because of just that assistant coach factor.
You are exactly right, and I think Coach Harbaugh is finally making those strides in bringing some assistant coaches on board at the University of Michigan that understand it, like an Ed Warner, like some of the other guys that he's brought on. And guess what? They're becoming more competitive, and I'm excited to see what Michigan can do this year. And we've got a long road ahead of us to be able to talk about Michigan and Ohio State and week in and week out and the matchups leading up to the last week in November after Thanksgiving. And so we're excited about it, man. It was a great inaugural show.
Oh, my goodness. Unbelievable. We apologize. We had a few technology issues, but we fought through it.
Yep.
And we got enough personality and perseverance. And, Boren, we appreciate you hustling into the studio. We know traffic's not real good out there.
No, it's not. It's not like Ann Arbor. Columbus can be a different animal sometimes.
I know, exactly right. But we will remedy that. I've got some ideas. We're going to be able to fix all that stuff.
Perfect.
So we're going to wrap this show up. It's 8 o'clock. I want to apologize to my man, Don Thomas. He's been trying to call in. I promise you, Don, we will get you on the show next time. So I want everybody to remember, we are going to be at College Traditions next week, right on Lane, overlooking the horseshoe itself. It's going to be an exciting weekend. Michigan is going to be playing against Western Michigan. Who's Ohio State play next week, Zach?
Rutgers.
We're playing Rutgers.
Yep.
So that's going to be a good, thorough butt whipping of the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. And so, but we'll take it. It'll be an exciting show. I know the folks at College Traditions are going to be really excited. So be sure to join us down there, down on Lane Avenue, and we'll have a great show. And we're going to build up. You know, we're going to start doing the countdown days to the big game at the end of November after Thanksgiving. And we look forward to having everybody on the show then. But until then, Zach Boren, Shemy Schembechler, Jake Smith on the board. We're signing off this week, the Rivalry Classic Football Show. Go Blue!